In AD 626, the ancient Near East appeared to be entering a Persian age. Armies serving Khosrow II, the Sasanian king of kings, held Egypt, Syria, Palestine, and much of Anatolia. Persian commanders stood at Chalcedon, directly across the Bosporus from Constantinople, while Avar and Slavic forces attacked the Roman capital from Europe. The empire of the Caesars was being compressed between invasion, rebellion, fiscal breakdown, and the possibility of extinction. The scale of the reversal that followed almost defies belief. Only 25 years later, in AD 651, the last ruling Sasanian shah, Yazdijerd III, died near Merv, far from the palaces of his ancestors. His dynasty had lost Ctesiphon, its treasury, its field armies, and ultimately its throne. A monarchy that had ruled for more than 4 centuries disappeared within a single human lifetime. That is the historical crime scene. This is Professor Adrian Lockwell, the time detective of Archives of Humanity. The evidence will be examined through the war room, the royal court, the tax office, and the frontier, because empires rarely die for the reasons celebrated in their final battlefield legends. The contrast between AD 626 and AD 651 is almost too violent to accept. At its territorial high watermark, Sasanian Persia possessed more Roman land than any Persian power had controlled for centuries. Egypt, among the wealthiest tax-producing regions in the Mediterranean world, had fallen around AD 619. Jerusalem had been captured in AD 614, and the relic revered as the True Cross had been carried away, transforming military defeat into a wound against Roman Christian identity. Antioch and Damascus were lost. Persian forces had cut through provinces that financed Roman armies, supplied imperial cities, and anchored Roman power in the eastern Mediterranean. These were not isolated raids at the edge of an imperial map. They were conquests of capitals, ports, granaries, sacred centers, roads, treasuries, and administrative systems. The Roman Empire still commanded formidable resources, but its geopolitical body had been opened from Armenia to the Nile. Every Persian advance seemed to confirm that Khosrow II had broken the ancient balance between the two great powers. Roman governments had spent centuries containing Persian ambition through fortresses, diplomacy, subsidies, client kingdoms, and repeated war. By the early 7th century, that containment system was collapsing. Provinces that had once formed Rome's strategic depth became platforms for further Sasanian expansion. Yet at Constantinople, the final stroke refused to fall. The Avars and their Slavic contingents assaulted the city from the European side while Persian troops remained at Chalcedon on the Asian shore. The Bosporus was not a decorative line on a map. It was a defended maritime barrier, and the coalition possessed no secure mechanism for transporting a Persian field army across it. The Allies could threaten the same capital without becoming a unified force. Roman naval control restricted movement. Coordination fractured. The assault failed. That failure did not immediately erase Persia's astonishing position. Khosrow's commanders still occupied enormous territories. The Sasanian court could still contemplate a political order in which Roman power had been permanently reduced or expelled from much of the Near East. From the Nile Valley to the Caucasus, governors, bishops, aristocrats, merchants, soldiers, and local communities faced an urgent political calculation. Whether Persian occupation represented a temporary emergency or the beginning of a new imperial order. The answer mattered because authority depends on expectations. Taxes are paid, alliances are formed, and resistance is abandoned when people begin to believe that a conqueror will still be present next year. An empire is strengthened not merely when its armies seize territory, but when institutions and local elites reorganize themselves around the assumption that the conquest will last. For a moment, the Sasanians appeared close to producing that transformation. Persia's greatest victory helped create the conditions of its destruction. But that statement is a paradox, not an explanation. Victory does not automatically destroy a state. Successful empires can absorb provinces, convert plunder into revenue, transform commanders into governors, and use prestige to silence domestic rivals. The Sasanians themselves had repeatedly demonstrated an extraordinary capacity for survival. Roman emperors had invaded their territory. Central Asian powers had threatened their eastern provinces. Noble houses had challenged royal authority. Shahs had been deposed, restored, assassinated, and replaced. Plague had crossed imperial boundaries without respecting crowns, armies, or altars. Religious disputes had divided communities and complicated political allegiance. The dynasty survived all of them. It survived because the Sasanian Empire was not a temporary military camp held together by one exceptional king. It possessed courts, provincial institutions, tax systems, irrigation economies, urban centers, military households, aristocratic networks, religious establishments, diplomatic traditions, and a powerful language of kingship. Its rulers negotiated with Rome as equals. Its armies had captured Roman emperors and compelled Roman governments to purchase peace. Its court developed political forms later echoed by Islamic caliphates, while its administrative customs, artistic traditions, royal legends, and ideals of justice endured long after the fall of the ruling house. The word Persia can therefore conceal as much as it reveals. The Sasanian realm was a multi-ethnic imperial system extending across Iraq, Iran, Armenia, the Caucasian approaches, the Persian Gulf, and, at different moments, deep into Central Asia and Roman territory. Its subjects spoke many languages and followed competing religious traditions. Zoroastrians, Christians, Jews, Manichaeans, and other communities lived within its political orbit. Powerful Iranian noble families served the Shah while defending hereditary influence that no monarch could simply abolish. Arab clients guarded desert approaches. Armenian aristocrats navigated between imperial courts. Deportees and conquered populations carried skills, technical knowledge, political intelligence, and collective memory across borders. Nor was this a simple collision between a Western civilization and an Eastern one. The state commonly called Byzantine was the Roman Empire of its own age, ruled from Constantinople but sustained by Greek, Armenian, Syriac, Coptic, Latin, Isaurian, Balkan, and other populations. Rome and Persia were not sealed cultural blocks. They exchanged prisoners, merchants, ambassadors, technologies, defectors, theologians, mercenaries, and political refugees. Their courts imitated one another even while claiming universal supremacy. Each empire defined itself partly through rivalry with the other. That rivalry had lasted so long that it could appear permanent. Fortresses changed hands. Tribute was paid. Treaties were sworn and broken. Embassies crossed the frontier carrying gold, silk, threats, and elaborate declarations of fraternity. A Roman emperor and a Persian shah could address one another as brothers while preparing armies against the same provinces. Neither empire normally possessed the capacity to destroy the other. Their competition was brutal, but it remained constrained by geography, logistics, rival frontiers, internal politics, and the knowledge that an exhausted victor might expose itself to another enemy. Rome had to consider the Balkans, the Mediterranean, and its own succession crises. Persia had to consider the Caucasus, Arabia, Central Asia, and the ambitions of its great noble houses. Every concentration of power on one frontier created vulnerability somewhere else. The war that began after AD 602 broke those restraints. The overthrow and murder of the Roman Emperor Maurice gave Khosrow II a grievance, a justification, and an opportunity. Maurice had helped restore Khosrow to the Sasanian throne during an earlier dynastic crisis. His death could therefore be presented as both a personal betrayal and an assault on legitimate monarchy. In a dynastic world, vengeance and strategy were not opposites. Royal obligation, public legitimacy, and geopolitical calculation belonged to the same political language. What began as punishment expanded as Roman resistance weakened. Every Persian success created a larger possibility. Larger possibilities demanded wider occupation. Wider occupation required more troops, more dependable supply routes, more bargaining with local elites, more taxation, and greater reliance on commanders operating far from the royal court. Triumph enlarged the prize, but it also enlarged the machine required to hold it. That hidden equation stands at the center of the mystery. The Sasanian state could project armies farther than earlier generations had considered possible. It could seize the economic heartlands of its rival. Yet conquest and consolidation were not the same act. A mobile army could defeat enemy forces or capture a city. An imperial administration had to collect revenue, protect roads, manage religious communities, restrain ambitious generals, maintain garrisons, and convince uncertain populations that tomorrow's authority would resemble today's. Every conquered province became both an asset on the royal map and an obligation in the imperial ledger. James Howard-Johnston, in The Last Great War of Antiquity, places immense weight on the destructive scale of the final Roman-Persian conflict. In this interpretation, the two powers did not merely exchange border fortresses. They fought until their fiscal, military, demographic, and political reserves were severely depleted. Rome eventually recovered its lost territories, but diplomatic restoration could not resurrect dead soldiers, repair every abandoned farm, restore every displaced community, or instantly rebuild confidence in damaged institutions. Persia's reversal carried an additional danger. Khosrow II had claimed the prestige of conquest. When the victories were undone, military defeat threatened not only the frontier but the political authority of the king who had made expansion the proof of his legitimacy. War exhaustion explains much, but it does not explain everything. The Roman Empire also endured invasion, plague, taxation, mutiny, rebellion, and religious division. Constantinople came close to catastrophe. Yet the Roman system retained a political center around which resistance could be reconstructed. Persia did not simply suffer the same wounds with a different flag. Its internal structure transformed defeat into a distinct kind of crisis. Parvana Portiariety, in decline and fall of the Sasanian Empire, directs attention toward that internal architecture. Her revisionist interpretation challenges the familiar image of a smoothly centralized monarchy commanding obedient aristocrats. Sasanian power depended upon great noble houses, regional interests, military lineages, and negotiated loyalties whose political memory could be older than the reigning shah. When the royal center weakened, the empire did not merely become less efficient. Its component power networks could support rival claimants, preserve regional forces, pursue separate bargains, and undermine unified resistance. The decisive questions were therefore not limited to how many soldiers remained or how much territory could still be taxed. Authority depended on which commanders the soldiers obeyed, which officials could collect revenue, which nobles trusted the throne, and whether any claimant could convert dynastic blood into collective action. A state may retain wealth, weapons, cities, and experienced officers while losing the political agreement that turns those resources into power. Turaj-Dariyi's Sasanian Persia emphasizes the sophistication of Sasanian kingship, administration, Iranian identity, and imperial culture while resisting crude stories of inevitable decadence. The late empire was not simply rotting behind a glittering facade. It remained adaptive, ambitious, and capable of mobilizing immense force. That capability makes the speed of its fall more difficult to explain, not less. A weak state collapsing under pressure presents little mystery. A resilient state reaching unprecedented territorial power before suffering dynastic extinction demands forensic scrutiny. The armies advancing from Arabia add another dimension. Older narratives sometimes portrayed the conquests as an inexplicable desert eruption. Austere warriors sweeping over civilizations too decadent to resist. That image replaces history with astonishment. The early caliphate was developing political cohesion, religious purpose, adaptable command, operational mobility, and a capacity to negotiate with local communities. Its forces were not merely raiders seeking plunder before retreating. They could defeat field armies, bargain with cities, absorb allies, and sustain campaigns across enormous distances. The Sasanian collapse cannot be reduced to an Arab miracle, just as it cannot be reduced to Persian moral failure. The conquerors possessed real political and military effectiveness. Their opponents faced real exhaustion and internal fragmentation. Plague and fiscal disruption intensified the crisis. Local communities responded according to their circumstances. Some resisted, some negotiated, some changed patrons, and others sought autonomy amid the weakening of competing authorities. The tension among these interpretations must remain unresolved at the threshold of the story. Howard-Johnston directs attention toward the catastrophic cost of total war. Portiarity exposes the rival aristocratic and regional networks beneath royal claims of unity. The rise of the early caliphate reveals that Persia did not fall into an empty geopolitical space but confronted a new and increasingly formidable order. The timing remains the sharpest problem. Aristocratic tension had existed in Iran for generations. Roman-Persian warfare was ancient. Epidemics were not new. Arabian communities had long interacted with both empires through commerce, diplomacy, military service, and client kingdoms. Yet, after AD 628, these pressures converged with terminal force. The removal of one ruler unleashed a succession struggle the monarchy could not contain. Surviving generals and noble houses failed to reconstruct a durable coalition around the crown. Territorial restoration gave Rome a reprieve, while defeat transformed Persia's throne into a prize contested by the very powers expected to defend it. The sources deepen the danger of easy answers. Roman chronicles interpreted catastrophe through Christian providence and imperial restoration. Armenian and Syriac writers preserved invaluable testimony while viewing events through communal peril and political expectation. Later Arabic and Persian historians inherited layered memories in which court legend, administrative knowledge, epic tradition, and moral judgment became intertwined. Sasanian coins, inscriptions, and royal art proclaimed divine favor, continuity, and sovereign command, but official images reveal what monarchy wanted to project, not what every aristocrat was prepared to obey. A captured city proves that its defenses failed. It does not prove that the conqueror could govern the surrounding region indefinitely. A royal order proves intention, not compliance. A restored frontier in a peace agreement proves diplomatic concession, not institutional recovery. Imperial power existed in the distance between the command and its execution. That distance cannot be measured from the final battlefield alone. The dynasty that died near Merv had begun as a revolutionary house from Persis. It rose against an older Iranian imperial order that was durable, decentralized, and deeply rooted in aristocratic power. Its founders claimed the title King of Kings, surrounded monarchy with a formidable language of sacred legitimacy, and attempted to command noble lineages that had survived earlier dynasties. The vanished empire first entered history not as a ruin, but as a rebellion. Its ascent began when Ardashir I challenged the Ars-Acid world and forged a new, dangerous bargain among crown, nobility, priesthood, provincial power, and army. The dynasty Ardashir I overthrew was neither fragile nor primitive. For nearly 5 centuries, the Arsacids of Parthia had governed a vast and difficult imperial realm stretching from Mesopotamia across the Iranian plateau and into Central Asia. They had survived Roman invasions, dynastic feuds, regional revolts, and repeated challenges from their own aristocracy. In 53 BC, Parthian horsemen annihilated the army of Crassus at Carrhae, exposing the limits of Roman expansion. More than a century later, Emperor Trajan captured Ctesiphon and reached the Persian Gulf, yet Rome could not permanently absorb the territories it had overrun. The Arsacid system bent, lost cities, replaced kings, and recovered. Its durability came partly from the very feature later historians often mistook for weakness: the distribution of power. The Arsacid King of Kings presided over a political landscape filled with hereditary noble houses, regional monarchs, temple communities, urban elites, and military retainers. Some local dynasts minted coins, commanded armies, collected revenues, and maintained identities rooted in territories older than the imperial throne itself. Their loyalty was not imaginary, but neither was it unconditional. They served the Arsacid order because that order protected their status and gave them a place within a larger hierarchy. This was empire by coalition. It could incorporate different peoples without demanding complete administrative uniformity. It could survive the defeat of a monarch because power remained embedded in provinces, aristocratic families, fortified cities, and military networks. Yet the same resilience created a recurring danger. When royal authority weakened, great houses could choose between rival princes. Provincial rulers could delay obedience until the outcome of a succession struggle became clear. Soldiers might follow a commander because of ancestry, patronage, or personal loyalty rather than because of an abstract duty to the state. The throne remained formidable, but the empire never belonged to the king alone. The revolt that destroyed this order began in Persis, the southwestern Iranian region associated with the ancient Persian heartland. Local dynasties there had preserved distinctive political and religious traditions beneath Arsacid supremacy. From this environment emerged Ardashir, a ruler whose early life was later surrounded by competing genealogies and foundation legends. His precise relationship to Papak, the local ruler associated with his rise, remains debated. Sasanian tradition transformed ancestry into political ammunition because a revolutionary founder required more than military talent. He required a past worthy of the future he intended to seize. Ardashir first consolidated Persis, then expanded into neighboring territories. Each conquest brought more than land. Fortresses widened his defensive base. Revenue paid retainers. Captured cities supplied administrators and craftsmen. Victories attracted cavalrymen whose loyalty followed success. Local rulers who had once regarded Ardashir as a provincial challenger began to confront a new calculation. Resistance could preserve the Arsacid order, but accommodation might secure a place in the regime replacing it. Artabanus IV could not ignore this expansion. Permitting Ardashir to continue would allow a subordinate king to become an independent sovereign. Suppressing him, however, required Artabanus to mobilize an imperial coalition whose members did not necessarily share the same enthusiasm for preserving his personal rule. The decentralized strength of the Arsacid system had become a vulnerability at the moment when unity was most necessary. In AD 224, the armies met at Hormozgan. Its exact location remains disputed, but its political consequence is unmistakable. Ardashir defeated Artabanus IV, and the Arsacid king was killed. Later Sasanian imagery compressed the struggle into a decisive transfer of legitimacy. A chosen founder overthrowing an exhausted and unworthy order. The historical process was far less orderly. Arsacid resistance did not disappear with Artabanus. Rival claimants, noble lineages, and regional powers continued to resist, particularly in Armenia and parts of the east. Hormozgan destroyed the reigning monarch. It did not instantly erase the relationships, loyalties, and institutions through which the Arsacids had governed. Around AD 226, Ardashir was crowned, probably at Ctesiphon. The ruler from Persis had become the founder of a new imperial house. His victory had been achieved with cavalry and coalition building, but preserving it demanded an ideological revolution. A successful warlord could capture cities and treasure. A king of kings had to explain why every lesser throne, noble family, military commander, and religious authority should now accept a hierarchy centered upon the House of Sasan. The answer appeared through titles, ritual, coinage, and monumental art. Early Sasanian coins described Ardashir as the Mazda-worshipping divine Ardashir, king of kings of the Iranians. Under his successors, the formula widened into kingship over Iran and non-Iran. That expression carried universal implications. Iran was not merely a modern geographical label projected backward. It represented an imperial and cultural realm ordered beneath legitimate Iranian kingship. Non-Iran extended the royal claim beyond that realm, asserting that the Shah's authority was not confined by ethnicity or ancestral territory. The title described an ambition, not a completed reality. It proclaimed how the monarchy wanted the world arranged. Turej-Darii has emphasized the Sasanian role in shaping a more explicit concept of Iran as an imperial community. Territory, lineage, religion, and kingship were drawn together beneath a ruler presented as the guardian of divinely sanctioned order. Yet this identity did not emerge fully formed at Ardashir's coronation. It developed through conquest, court ritual, conflict with Rome, rivalry in Central Asia, and the monarchy's continuing negotiations with its own elites. The investiture reliefs converted those claims into permanent political theater. At Nakshi-Rostam, Ardashir receives the ring of kingship from Ormuzd. Beneath the horses of king and deity lie defeated enemies. A contested civil war is transformed into cosmic judgment. The relief does not neutrally record the rise of Ardashir. It commands an interpretation of that rise. Artabanus had not simply been defeated by a stronger rival. Legitimate order itself had passed to a divinely favored dynasty. Coinage carried the same argument farther than carved stone ever could. Royal portraits, individualized crowns, sacred fire imagery, and carefully chosen inscriptions moved through markets, garrisons, tax offices, and diplomatic exchanges. Political theology became portable. The ruler's image connected ordinary transactions to dynastic sovereignty, while the fire altar associated royal authority with sacred order. These coins are among the most important forms of evidence for early Sasanian ideology because they reveal the official language the regime deliberately placed into circulation. They do not prove that every subject accepted the message. They reveal what the monarchy considered essential for subjects to encounter repeatedly. The dynasty also drew legitimacy from Persis and from selective memories of ancient Iranian monarchy. That connection once encouraged an overly simple interpretation. Ardashir consciously restored the Achaemenid Empire of Cyrus and Darius after centuries of foreign interruption. The surviving evidence cannot sustain so precise a resurrection. Joseph Wieshofer and other scholars have cautioned against assuming that the Sasanians possessed a detailed knowledge of Achaemenid history comparable to modern scholarship. Ancient palaces, tombs, and reliefs remained visible in the landscape. Persis preserved the authority of old royal and sacred places. Local traditions undoubtedly survived. But political memory is never an untouched archive. It compresses centuries, merges rulers with heroes, and reshapes the past according to the needs of the present. Sasanian traditions often organized antiquity through legendary Iranian dynasties and heroic cycles rather than through an exact reconstruction of Achaemenid rulers and institutions. The early shahs may have recognized ancient monuments as proof that Iranian kingship had once commanded a greater world without knowing the identity or policies of every ruler who built them. Their claim was therefore broader and more useful than archaeological restoration. Ancient Iranian sovereignty, they declared, had returned to its rightful guardians. That declaration could not erase the centuries of Ars-Acid rule between the ancient empires and the new dynasty. Khodadad Rezakhani's work on the Eastern Iranian world has challenged narratives that reduce the Sasanian revolution to a complete national rebirth radiating from the southwest. Iranian political culture had continued to develop under the Ars-Acids and among the dynasties of the East. Aristocratic identities, cavalry traditions, regional institutions, and concepts of kingship crossed the supposed divide between Parthian decline and Sasanian renewal. Ardashir could overthrow the Ars-Acid royal house. He could not govern without much of the social order the Ars-Acids had preserved. That contradiction became the hidden constitution of the Sasanian Empire. In royal art, the Shah stood above defeated rivals, receiving authority from the divine world. In political practice, sovereignty remained negotiated among institutions and families capable of resisting the throne. The great noble houses possessed extensive lands, armed followings, ancestral prestige, and regional networks older than the Sasanian dynasty. Some had served the Ars-Acids. Attempting to eliminate all of them would have destroyed much of the military and administrative machinery required to govern the empire. Provincial dynasts retained influence in strategically sensitive territories. Lesser landed nobles and free warriors supplied cavalry, managed estates, and connected the court to local society. Court officers controlled access to the ruler. Commanders expected offices, rewards, and recognition in return for service. The Shah could promote loyal families, confiscate estates, rearrange commands, and destroy individual enemies. Yet every act of royal consolidation carried a cost. A noble house deprived of honor might withhold troops. A provincial ruler pushed too far might defect during war. A victorious general could become indispensable enough to challenge the monarch who had elevated him. The same aristocratic networks that carried royal power into the provinces could redirect that power toward a rival claimant. The resulting state was neither a modern centralized bureaucracy nor a loose confederation ruled by a ceremonial king. The traditional interpretation emphasizes genuine Sasanian centralization, stronger royal ideology, more assertive administration, closer dynastic control of coinage, expanding fiscal mechanisms, and a clearer association between kingship and Zoroastrian institutions. Ardashir and his successors sought to make monarchy more visible, more commanding, and less dependent on the ambiguity that had characterized periods of Ars-Acid weakness. Revisionist scholarship places greater emphasis on negotiated sovereignty. In this model, royal commands passed through noble houses, local dynasts, landed administrators, military entrepreneurs, and religious authorities. Central institutions mattered, but they could not operate independently of hereditary power. The Shah could intervene aggressively when he possessed revenue, military success, and elite confidence. When those resources weakened, the aristocratic foundations beneath royal absolutism became impossible to conceal. The two interpretations describe different sides of the same struggle. The monarchy centralized because aristocratic power was formidable. Aristocratic power endured because the monarchy needed it to collect taxes, recruit cavalry, secure roads, and defend distant frontiers. Every victory increased the Shah's authority to distribute offices and punish disobedience. Every succession crisis revealed that a crown unsupported by soldiers, revenue, and noble recognition was only a symbol waiting for another claimant. Zoroastrian institutions operated within this contest rather than above it. Early Sasanian rulers publicly identified themselves with Mazda worship and used sacred symbolism to legitimize dynastic power. Priests could preserve ritual knowledge, administer religious foundations, support royal authority, and describe obedience to the Shah as participation in a divinely ordered world. The crown, in turn, could protect temples, reward clerical allies, and elevate religious institutions that reinforced the monarchy's claims. Yet Zoroastrianism was not a perfectly uniform state church imposed in finished form from the first day of Ardashir's reign. Its hierarchies, textual traditions, institutions, and relationship with political authority continued to evolve. Religious leaders could validate kings, but they could also judge them, support court factions, and promote definitions of orthodoxy that conflicted with imperial pragmatism. The Shah ruled Christians, Jews, Buddhists, polytheists, Manichaeans, and diverse Zoroastrian communities across territories connected by conquest rather than cultural uniformity. Religious legitimacy could bind the monarchy to influential constituencies. Excessive coercion could alienate taxpayers, merchants, provincial elites, and border communities whose cooperation remained strategically necessary. Royal ideology promised order, but imperial survival demanded flexibility. Ardashir's revolution, therefore, did not abolish pluralism. It placed a more aggressive doctrine of kingship over an empire that remained socially composite. The Shah governed through overlapping bargains with commanders who could win wars or influence successions, with provincial elites who converted decrees into revenue, with priests who translated power into sacred legitimacy, and with communities whose loyalty could not always be commanded from the palace. The location of that palace exposed the strategic paradox at the center of the new order. Ctesiphon, on the Tigris in Mesopotamia, became the principal imperial center within a larger urban complex that included Seleucia and later Sasanian foundations. The region contained dense populations, major roads, workshops, irrigated estates, and some of the richest agricultural lands in the empire. Mesopotamia generated the revenue required to sustain courts, fortifications, cavalry forces, and imperial administration. From Ctesiphon, the Shah could oversee routes into the Iranian plateau while projecting power toward Armenia, Syria, Arabia, and the Persian Gulf. But the source of imperial strength was also exposed to Roman attack. Roman emperors repeatedly invaded Mesopotamia because its cities offered wealth, strategic leverage, and immense political prestige. A march against Ctesiphon was never merely a raid against another capital. It challenged the Shah's claim to defend the ordered world displayed on Sasanian coins and reliefs. The monarchy governed from a frontier because that frontier was also its fiscal heart. Retreating permanently into the Iranian interior might have offered greater safety, but it would have weakened immediate control over the richest corridor of imperial power. Ctesiphon placed the dynasty close to revenue, roads, and western battlefields. It also ensured that almost every major war with Rome could become a test of royal legitimacy. Beyond the capital stretched not a single border, but an interconnected geopolitical machine. The fortified cities of Mesopotamia, the dynastic battleground of Armenia, the passes of the Caucasus, the Arabian client kingdoms, the Persian Gulf, and the eastern corridors leading into Central Asia. Wealth moved along those routes, but so did armies, claimants, merchants, intelligence, and rival faiths. Ardashir had seized the throne of Iran. His successors inherited a chessboard on which no frontier could ever be treated in isolation. At Merv in AD 651, the death of Yazdijerd III extinguished the ruling House of Sasan. Later traditions disagree over the final act. Some identify the killer as a miller. Others implicate a local governor, regional agents, or men seeking favor from the advancing conquerors. The details remain layered by memory and legend. The historical consequence does not. A fugitive Shah could be murdered far from his capital, But no assassin could destroy the administrative habits, aristocratic memories, religious institutions, languages, and political imagination accumulated across more than 4 centuries of Sasanian rule. That distinction matters because dynasties and civilizations do not die in the same way. A dynasty depends upon recognized command. It requires a legitimate sovereign, a functioning treasury, officers willing to obey one another, and elites convinced that preserving the throne is safer than dividing its remains. Civilization is less concentrated and therefore more difficult to kill. It survives in taxation, law, sacred texts, family memory, court etiquette, artistic forms, and the vocabulary through which later conquerors learned to govern. The Sasanian state lost the struggle for political survival. Sasanian civilization entered a longer contest over inheritance. The military verdict had been devastating. Persia began the 7th century as one of the 2 dominant imperial powers of Western Eurasia. Its armies occupied Egypt, Syria, Palestine, and much of Anatolia. Its commanders reached Chalcedon, across the Bosporus from Constantinople. Yet within a generation, Ctesiphon had fallen. The field armies had been defeated, dispersed, or absorbed into regional struggles, and the King of Kings had become a refugee searching for loyalty that royal blood could no longer command. Rome survived the final war, recovered the relic identified as the True Cross, and regained its provinces. Yet the apparent victor inherited devastation. Syria, Palestine, Egypt, Armenia, and Mesopotamia had endured occupation, counterattack, emergency taxation, requisition, displacement, and repeated changes of authority. Armies consumed the resources they were meant to defend. Provincial confidence in Constantinople had been shaken by the speed of the Persian advance and by the immense cost of Roman restoration. When the forces of the early caliphate entered Syria and Egypt, the Roman government confronted them not as the secure master of a restored Eastern Mediterranean, but as an exhausted imperial center attempting to rebuild authority over societies that had already experienced the collapse and return of Roman power. Persia paid the higher constitutional price. Heraclius did not annihilate every Sasanian army. His campaigns exposed the inability of Khosrow II to protect the prestige, resources, and coalition upon which monarchy depended. Generals had learned that they could negotiate with foreign emperors, withhold obedience, overthrow shahs, and even seize the throne. Noble houses had learned that royal legitimacy could be manipulated. Provincial authorities had learned that survival might require private negotiation rather than loyalty to Ctesiphon. The monarchy still possessed land, soldiers, fortifications, silver, and administrative knowledge. What it no longer possessed was a reliable mechanism for transforming those resources into trusted collective action. Material power remained. Political coordination collapsed. James Howard-Johnston places immense weight on the exhaustion produced by the last Roman-Persian War. 2 great powers mobilized beyond the sustainable limits of their rivalry, damaging the fiscal and military balance that had structured the Near East for generations. In this interpretation, the conquests of the early caliphate became possible because Rome and Persia had spent blood, revenue, and legitimacy in a war neither could afford to finish and neither knew how to abandon. Parvana Porshariadi directs attention toward the internal architecture of Persian power. Her reconstruction emphasizes aristocratic networks, regional military traditions, and the fracture of the confederate structures beneath Sasanian kingship. Royal inscriptions, reliefs, and coinage presented an ordered hierarchy centered upon the King of Kings. Political reality was more negotiated. The Shah depended upon great houses whose cavalry, estates, offices, and regional influence could sustain the empire or paralyze it. Once the dynasty descended into execution, counter-coup, and disputed succession, those networks ceased to function as the hidden skeleton of imperial unity. They became competing systems of protection. The empire did not simply lose leaders. It lost agreement over who possessed the right to command. Hugh Kennedy restores the agency of the conquerors themselves. The armies of the early caliphate were not a natural disaster crossing passive ruins. They emerged from a rapidly consolidating religious and political order. Their commanders could move forces across difficult distances, gather intelligence, exploit divided enemies, negotiate settlements, recover after reversals, and convert frontier raids into sustained campaigns. Ideological cohesion did not erase tribal loyalties or command disputes, but it created a framework within which mobilized Arabian communities could pursue objectives far beyond the scale of traditional raiding. Michael Moroni's work on Iraq after the conquest further dismantles the illusion of clean civilizational replacement. The transition unfolded unevenly across cities, estates, villages, monasteries, fire temples, military districts, and irrigation communities. Some resisted, some negotiated terms. Some local elites preserved property or influence by transferring service. Persian secretaries, tax specialists, landholders, and administrators remained valuable because conquest could seize a treasury, but only administration could refill it. No single interpretation explains the speed, timing, and character of the collapse. War exhaustion explains vulnerability, but exhausted states do not always disappear. Aristocratic fragmentation explains the failure of coordinated command, but not the operational effectiveness of the armies exploiting that failure. The plague associated with Shiro intensified demographic and administrative crisis, but disease alone cannot explain battlefield decisions, defections, or the destruction of royal legitimacy. Fiscal disruption, damaged irrigation, military decentralization, and provincial autonomy all deepen the emergency without making conquest inevitable. Even the abolition of the Lakhmid kingdom around AD 602 resists simple explanation. It may have weakened a valuable Persian buffer, intelligence network, and diplomatic intermediary along the Arabian frontier. Yet no single decision taken decades earlier mechanically produced the conquests. Structural weakness created openings. Human organization determined who could exploit them. The fall was neither a morality tale about Persian decadence nor an epic of predetermined victory. It was a convergence of crises moving at different speeds. Kavad II's murder of potential male rivals destroyed the dynasty's reserve of legitimate heirs. The plague removed officials, soldiers, laborers, and taxpayers when replacement was most difficult. Court factions turned succession into armed competition. Provincial leaders sought local survival as central protection failed. War disrupted taxation and recruitment. Then a new power entered the system with enough cohesion, mobility, and political imagination to transform scattered openings into strategic momentum. The deepest irony is that the Sasanian Empire had not failed to develop sophisticated institutions. It had reformed taxation, expanded administrative registers, reorganized military command, cultivated fortified landscapes, integrated landed elites, and constructed a compelling ideology of universal kingship. These achievements allowed the monarchy to mobilize power on an unprecedented scale. They also allowed it to wage an unprecedented war. Institutions preserve the memory of the dangers they were designed to confront. Persia and Rome spent centuries learning how to contain one another. Their fortresses, client alliances, diplomatic rituals, cavalry systems, fiscal machinery, and strategic assumptions were shaped by a rivalry that appeared permanent. Each empire became extraordinarily skilled at reading the other. Each also became increasingly dependent upon a world in which the other remained the central measure of danger. Deterrence preserved a rough equilibrium for generations. It limited ambition by making final victory appear prohibitively expensive. Khosrow II shattered that restraint when Roman civil war opened the possibility of something greater than border revision. His armies conquered provinces, seized sacred symbols, and threatened the survival of Roman government. But every victory generated new obligations. Garrisons to supply, commanders to reward, populations to tax, collaborators to protect, opponents to suppress, and communications to defend. Heraclius answered with extraordinary operational audacity. Instead of reconquering every province in sequence, he penetrated the Persian strategic rear, threatened royal resources, worked through Caucasian alliances, and intensified distrust between Khosrow and his commanders. His victory restored Roman prestige and territory. It did not restore the lives, revenue, and political confidence consumed by the struggle. Total victory became a mirage for both empires. Persia's greatest expansion produced its widest exposure. Rome's restoration concealed profound exhaustion. Each ruler believed that another campaign might purchase lasting security. Each success enlarged the burden of the next decision. This catastrophe did not require every participant to become irrational. Khosrow had strategic reasons to exploit Roman civil war. Heraclius had compelling reasons to reject submission. Generals had reasons to fear royal suspicion. Noble houses had reasons to preserve regional power when the court became lethal. Provincial communities had reasons to negotiate with whichever authority could protect land, worship, trade, and family. The disaster emerged because individually defensible choices accumulated into collective ruin. A commander concealed information to survive a purge. An aristocrat withheld forces to protect his house. A court raised taxes to fund defense. A province negotiated separately because the center could no longer guarantee protection. Every decision offered immediate logic. Together, they dissolved the trust upon which imperial coordination depended. Powerful states rarely fail because all resources vanish at once. They fail when institutions can no longer convert resources into loyalty, obedience, and common purpose. Armies require more than weapons. Taxation requires more than registers. Frontiers require more than fortresses. Complex states endure because distant communities and rival elites continue to believe that cooperation under the center is safer than private negotiation outside it. Once that belief collapses, immense resources can remain physically present while becoming politically unusable. Allegiance can move faster than armies, wealth, or population. In 7th century Persia, that movement of allegiance proved decisive. Yet, dynastic extinction did not produce civilizational silence. Sasanian administrative methods influenced the governments that followed. Persian secretaries, fiscal specialists, soldiers, and landholders entered new structures of rule. Silver coinage continued to imitate Sasanian forms before changing under Islamic authority. Court ceremony and images of universal kingship passed into the political culture of the caliphates. Traditions surrounding Khosrow I became instruments through which later rulers debated justice, taxation, hierarchy, and the obligations of sovereignty. Turaj-Dari has emphasized the durability of Iranian identity and Sasanian memory beyond the dynasty's end. That continuity was not cultural stasis. Zoroastrian communities adapted to new political conditions. Christian and Jewish institutions persisted. Iranian elites negotiated roles within the caliphate. Persian eventually reemerged as a major literary language, transformed by Arabic and inseparable from the Islamic civilization in which it flourished. Centuries later, the Shahnameh gathered Iranian royal memory into an epic architecture of legitimacy, glory, betrayal, justice, and loss. It was not a neutral transcript of Sasanian history. Like the layered traditions preserved by Al-Tabari, it transmitted the past through selection, adaptation, and moral interpretation. That transformation was itself evidence of survival. The vanished empire remained available as a language for judging every empire that followed. The conquerors changed Iran, and Iran changed the civilization of the conquerors. Abbasid court culture, bureaucratic practice, political council, visual art, imperial ceremony, and literature carried traces of the order that military conquest had supposedly erased. Ctesiphon ceased to command an empire, but much of the political intelligence accumulated there migrated into Baghdad and beyond. Dynastic death became civilizational transmission. The ultimate verdict is therefore more unsettling than a simple story of rise and fall. The danger was not backwardness. It was sophistication without restraint. Rome and Persia possessed experienced diplomats, capable generals, intelligence networks, tax systems, fortified frontiers, and doctrines refined over centuries. Their instruments failed when political leaders made them servants of unlimited objectives. Rivalry ceased to be managed and became existential. Compromise appeared as humiliation, escalation as resolve, and temporary advantage as evidence that final victory remained attainable. Long competition can produce extraordinary competence while narrowing strategic imagination. Institutions become optimized for the enemy they understand. Militaries prepare for familiar campaigns. Bureaucracies defend the assumptions that sustain their authority. Courts reward information confirming inherited threats. Beyond that familiar contest, new coalitions and political identities gather in regions the imperial map treats as peripheral. The House of Sasan fell because it could no longer coordinate the powers that remained within its world. Iranian civilization endured because memory, administration, faith, and culture were not confined to the throne. Rome survived, but the Roman Near East was transformed beyond recognition. The early caliphate conquered, but conquest began a longer process of negotiation, adaptation, and cultural fusion. Persia reached its greatest territorial extent and discovered that possession could become exposure. Rome recovered its provinces and discovered that restoration could conceal exhaustion. Both powers won victories their political traditions demanded. Neither controlled the world those victories created. The House of Sasan died at Merv. Its political inheritance traveled onward. Continue this investigation through the documentary on the end screen. In the comments, choose the decisive factor in Persia's fall: war exhaustion, aristocratic fracture, or the early caliphate's superior coordination. Subscribe to Archives of Humanity for more strategic histories explaining not only how civilizations rose and fell, but why their institutions succeeded, fractured, and survived in altered forms.